Hello, everyone. Today we are going to do a DAT board. Well, not just a DAT board. We're going to do a tutorial, not a tutorial. I'm stuff already. We're going to be going over the DAT board and looking at freight volumes in America today with Daniel McCarthy, Stronger by the Mile.
So we're going to be keeping our finger on the pulse of America using the DAT board, freight volume and stuff like that. That's just as important if you're an owner-operator, a lease driver, or a company driver even. You want to know what the market's doing because this is your profession. And with DAT, this is a great way to do it with your platform.
There are other load boards out there, but I personally prefer using the DAT board to keep an eye on things. But let's jump right into this and look at freight volumes today. Well, they're actually kind of dismal. This is no reflection on DAT board. It's just the freight volumes today, right? That's what we got to go with. Alaska has 2 loads out and 154 loads in.
Isn't too uncommon for Alaska.
No, that's not. But Alabama has 586 loads coming in and 160 going out. That's a little uncommon.
Yeah, it's a little. If you look at
ahead.
last week's, which I don't have a screenshot of last week's volumes, maybe we can dig around and get it and stick it, insert it in the spot.
I do have a screenshot of last Friday's load board.
So we'll take a look at that so you can see last week to this week, because last week the freight was ramping up, and now it's the freight world's starting to catch up, right? I mean, the warehouses and everything.
Now, what do you think is the cause of that, actually? Because Arizona here has 407 loads in and 278 loads out.
Now, with everything that's going on with the virus, the coronavirus, like Arizona has never been a really good spot to get out of, in my experience. It's just a whole lot of panic buying. Everyone's stocking up and getting full. And
well, in my opinion, when you look at the Arizona market, you have to look further out than 300 miles because the California market is tied in with the Arizona market. And a lot of people will bump on over to California. Now, LA, well, I shouldn't say LA, California has 1,186 loads in and 1,300 loads out, which is actually spectacular. Really.
That's a driver's market right there.
Yes, it is. It's definitely a driver's market. But that takes in, that takes in a good, a good portion of other markets, if you understand what I mean.
Right.
That people will deadhead that. I certainly will deadhead to LA in a heartbeat to pick up a load versus sitting in Arizona,
Right, I've absolutely done it. I've also deadheaded to New Mexico before to get a load out of Arizona.
Let's look down at New Mexico. New Mexico, yes, it's got 203 loads in and 48 out. So that's pretty sad. I believe what we're seeing here is that the current companies that are shutting down because of the coronavirus, the ones that are non-essential companies, those loads are not available on any board at the moment because the loads are gone, right?
Right.
So what we have is a downtrend in the market, which is not a reflection on anybody. It's just the economic picture that we have for today. And now also, how do we look at truck availability here? Because I'm thinking that a lot of the companies that are say all you do is essentially haul auto parts. What are you going to do in a down freight market but switch over to haul perishable goods, food supplies, and relief supplies? Because it's either that or go home.
Right. On your volume, are you looking for dry van freight right
now? Would that be okay? Search a truck.
No. Nope. Search on your front page. You see where
yes.
the bar graphs are that you were just looking at the top.
Yeah.
Right above that, there's a little spot you click on, and you can pick what kind of platform you're wanting to look at.
Okay, this is van freight, just
Van
pure van freight. Would you like to look at another market, or you want to stick with van freight at this time?
We'll stick with van freight. I
Okay,
just
van freight is the most prevalent that's out there for the average truck driver. And I really, the way you expressed that, keeping our finger on the pulse of America was a good way to express this, because company drivers, owner operators, everyone needs to know what's going on in the markets. Even if you're a company driver and you're like, well, I don't have to worry about it. My company sends me where they send me. But a lot of times a company will give you 4 or 5 different choices. And if you have your fingers on the pulse of America, you'll know which direction to go for a load
right.
for your next load.
Yeah, because you don't want to take a load, say, to Arizona or New Mexico when you're getting paid mileage and end up sitting for 2 days, when you can take a shorter run to, say, Indiana that has better freight and keep rolling.
This is really a dismal week in review, kind of. I mean, Wyoming, which is a sad state. I mean, when I say sad, I mean it's not a big volume state, but there's 180 loads in and 23 loads out. Wisconsin, 795 loads in and 313 loads out. We're finally going to move that cheese out of Wisconsin that we've had an overage of for many years, actually. So that'll be good for the economy in the long run.
Take a look at South Dakota. 348 loads going in and 24 loads going out. I don't think I've seen it that bad at this time of year in a very long time. Or actually, I don't know if I have. I mean, that's pretty bad. 24 loads coming out.
Let's look at some high volume states like Pennsylvania. That's a really high volume state. They do a really good job of keeping it at an average. But you have 881 loads in and 591 loads out. What is any other states that you might recommend having a look at that are high volume states for
Uh,
shipping?
I would definitely look at either Ohio or Indiana. Usually, that's a pretty good state to get out of. It's not, that difficult within the reefer market or the drive-in freight.
Yeah,
Ohio,
Ohio is
one,
definitely one of the best states.
yeah, Ohio's got 1,050 going in and 613 coming out.
Wow,
So
dude, that's so dismal. That is very dismal. So at this current time, with our current temperature, with things that are going on in every nation, actually, I see a downtrend for truckers are actually be sitting more, where a week ago there was no sitting involved. Book often, book early, and run hard.
yeah,
But if you're not booking early, you're not going to get a load for at least a day in between. And that means that the money on these loads is going to come down. It's not a buyer's market now. It's a seller's market all of a sudden.
I mean,
And what I mean, go ahead.
now New Jersey, if you look at New Jersey, is a good production state. Yeah, I mean, it's right on point to where I would say pretty consistent. 755 going in and 457 coming out.
Mm. It's still tough though. I mean, what's going on in New York? New York is about the same ratio at 864 in and 507 out.
Right. Now, what's
Um,
in your opinion, with freight volumes being the way they are, it's definitely going to be tougher to get out of the state than into the state. Um, is this a type of, looking at the dashboard and these volumes, do you think that drivers should be, trying to average out their cost per mile, their profit, what they're making, and kind of chase the mileage? Or do you think they should be sitting and kind of try to go for those home run loads?
I definitely think that you're not going to go for any home run loads in this market today. Last week you could go for the home run loads, you could bid them up and stuff, but in today's market, it's amazing how fast it can change. That it went to heck, right? So them guys that did drive up the prices a little bit last week, bully for them. They did a good job, right? But this week is going to be the exact opposite. You're going to have to take that load and hope that it doesn't cancel on you because someone else underbid you at some point along the way, which we both know does happen.
Right.
Would you like to take a look at the stock market today?
I would like to look at the stock market. We can pull up the Dow Jones and see how it is doing as well.
Let's pull it up.
Right now, the Dow Jones is down 4.0% on the day. It closed out at 21,636. A very large downtick today on the Dow Jones. Uh, Chris, I'll send you a screenshot of this, and maybe you can put it up on the screen for people to see. Um,
I have it up at the moment. The
we,
overall market of the Dow. Now, freight transportation stocks is something that's near and dear to our heart, and so I think we should cover that a little bit, right? I mean, the transportation market has always been a very volatile scene. Okay, I have switched it over here to the Nasdaq today, and the Nasdaq is down. Oh my goodness, 3.79%. That's it's been running pretty level, and it took a good uptick. Do you think that could be involved with day traders, maybe people that buy in for the short term, and then today is Friday, right? And they're jumping out of the market.
I think a lot of people are jumping out of the market. It's so volatile right now that they're not going to stay in and hold their shares. They're not going to hold their position, especially on anything that's not a blue cap stock. And even right now, with that going on, with like Boeing shutting down, and Spirit Airlines and other large companies that are really feeling the squeeze, I think they're jumping out just to be cautious and jump back in Monday. My prediction is Monday on a lot of these stocks there's going to be a morning rush or a what I guess you could say a pump and dump. I think it's gonna have a morning spike on Monday morning within the first 2 hours because everyone that got out is gonna want to get back in.
A lot of times with the words pump and dump, it's actually it's not
Hype.
the it's not the regular pump and dump of a company hyping themselves up. It's just
Right,
the fact that we know that we can buy into a specific stock and make significant cash gain by dumping it on a Friday and going back into it on a Monday at a low rate.
right,
And if you're not doing that inside of a 401k, it's just a moneymaker, right?
right.
Now, we don't support doing that, but if you do, you understand, right? Definitely. All right. So, what's going on in trucking today? Should we look at freight waves?
Let's look at Freightways if you can pull it up.
I certainly can. Freight waves is one of my go-to places. They're on the spot. They really are. They do a good job, in my opinion. And so we will look at freight waves. Now, in our market, life affects us in so many different ways. I wonder if I'll get in trouble for recording their screen. I don't know. Apparently, the rail group is pleased with the coronavirus stimulus package. I'm not surprised with that. The rail is definitely funded by the government so hard they couldn't make it on their own. I probably shouldn't have said that. Okay, 2020 air cargo volume may drop 20%. I'm not surprised by that. One area of stocks that I do personally carry and approve of is shipping stocks. When I say shipping, I mean actual ocean-going vessels.
Maritime.
Um, Yes, maritime ships. There are some really decent stocks out there to follow. Now, trucking stocks, since I'm sorry I went back to this, but I don't trust them a lot. Um, what's the company you work for, Daniel?
Uh, Smoky Point Distributing,
Smoky Point Distribution,
Dasky.
which is part of the Geske organization. Yeah, I mean that I think I consider that to be a pretty solid stock, in my opinion, in the
Yeah, I think
trucking industry.
I've been watching it for a while now, and I think it's a very good stock. A lot of people made a lot of money off the Dasky stock. What was it last week? The stock market was halted. Dasky wasn't reporting during that halt, so people panicked and got out of it. And it dropped down to 85 cents a share. Usually, it's up a lot more than that. So if you jumped in at 85 to 87, 90 cents a share, it went back up to I think $2 and some $3 a share. So you really had the opportunity to make a lot of money off that if you were set up watching it.
I see that could be a money maker in a way. I mean, we're not the stock guys or anything, but we've been known to make a dollar or two in the markets.
Yeah, here
And
and there.
we I like to hold stocks, but that's one that you might buy in and sell, buy in and sell a little bit actually.
One good thing about the stocks, watching the company that you work for, whether it's Swift, Knight, U.S. Express, that they're publicly traded. You can go and see how they're doing on the stock market. You can read their financial reports with the SEC, Security Trade Administration, and you can see how that company is doing financially. Because if you're at a company and you want to spend 20 years or more and retire, it's nice to know how the company's doing. That can also reflect on their 401k pensions and stuff like that.
It certainly can. Apparently, the CDC is telling truck drivers going through New York not to self quarantine. Okay, but they do think that they should pull back and stay away from people as much as they can. Americans to park 80% of domestic capacity by May. Oh well, that's the airlines. Okay,
Now,
Freightway covers rail and maritime and everything. I did not realize that. That's pretty spectacular.
they've got a pretty broad view of the markets out here. And
They
what
do.
a lot of people don't realize is that everything is the truck. The freight can only go so far by train. It can only go so far by boat, and then the truck has to pick it up. So
Correct.
those markets are hurting. At some point, it will trickle over into the trucking market. So you really want to keep your finger on the pulse of America. And that's what I like about the DAT system, because you can see in real time what the volumes are doing.
Exactly. You have to look at it in its entirety. It cannot just be trucking. If you don't understand the world as it works, then you, if you just look at trucking solely, you're not going to get a full picture, and you can't decide a lot of things. It's like if this coronavirus hadn't taken off like it has, well, world regulations about emissions was going to drive fuel prices up crazily because the ships at sea have not been regulated on their diesel particulate matter, and that just kicked in worldwide. So it was going to drive diesel prices up spectacularly. But then the coronavirus came along, and it didn't happen. Today, gasoline in Wisconsin was 99 cents a gallon.
I haven't seen that since the early 90s.
Yeah, it's been forever, and it's not a good thing, but it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's a terrible thing why it happened, and we know we're in a fuel price issue with Saudi Arabia right now. They're doubling down, but today for the person that pulls into a fuel pump to get gas or diesel, it's a good thing today.
Now, um, talking about getting diesel for these drivers that are lease drivers, a lot of them know how to work their fuel surcharge to make money off that. Now, with the
Oh
fuel
yeah,
dropping, the fuel surcharge is going to go down.
And that for us during the 2008 recession, fuel went to $5 a gallon. Diesel fuel went to $5 a gallon, and my fuel surcharge paid as much or more as my loads were paying. So I made spectacular money in that market myself, right? Because I slowed down and I just, you know, I made that money. I was getting 8.5 miles to the gallon. So I was like, yeah, bring it on. Now, I don't know, do you, when you was running your authority, you understood that you built your fuel surcharge into your load, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, would the brokers, did they differentiate between that for tax purposes, or was it just one? This is what you get paid, or do they break it apart?
Some of the brokerages would break it apart, but for the majority of them, it was just the lump sum. This is what you're getting
Okay,
paid. Here it is.
that's something we should talk about at a later date, because that's a really good topic right there.
That
You
is
know,
Now, for people that's not watching, do you want to explain what the fuel surcharge is, just in case they're new and they're watching this?
okay, I can explain it. I can't give you the correct numbers or anything like that. But the fuel surcharge was enacted in the 70s, I believe, and it's an arbitrary number that the government put out there, and they said if fuel goes above this price, shippers should pay this much extra. That extra is actually, as Daniel was saying, has to be built into the load. Um, if you're not building it into your own assessment when you're trying to book freight, it's something you need to think about. If you go, oh, I got $1.40 a mile, well, but you still need that fuel, right? So now when the fuel drops this low, I think that today the national fuel surcharge is around 30 cents, 28 or 30 cents, according to the last thing I checked this morning. If it drops much further, the fuel surcharge for people that are lease drivers or something in that nature will just totally go away. You can still build it in, but when you're booking freight, the people you're booking with will just turn down your bids. They'll be like, okay, well, you're bidding too high because you're trying to get, say you're trying to get another 20 cents a mile to cover your freight.
Yeah.
You may not get that extra 20 cents.
Yeah. Even when the market was doing good, it was still hard to negotiate a fuel surcharge with a lot of brokers. They would say, hey, this is what it's paying. You'd say, I'd like to do it for another $100, $200 because it's a long run. And they're like, well, what's wrong with the price that you're hauling? And you can tell them, hey, I got to pay for fuel surcharge. This is what it equates to. And a lot of times the brokers, not the good brokers, but the kind of the lower end ones, they would just simply say, hey, it's in the price. That's what you're getting.
That's yeah. I've dealt with that plenty of times in the day, right? But I mean, that's what it is. That's the freight volumes today. That's how it works. But that's why we're here, to keep our pulse on the finger of America.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add, Daniel?
There is a link in the description if anyone wants to try out DAT for 30 days on their dime. They can give it a look. They can look at the volumes and stuff that we talked about here. I would also suggest people to check out the free, I guess, Yahoo Finance or whatever. That way they can look at the stock market and they can overlay the charts and see that they trend very similar.
Someone chimed in that I said that backwards. We are the DAT guys, keeping our hands on the pulse of America.
I got to do it too.
All right, guys. You have a great week, and we will see you next week.
See you next week, guys.
Bye-bye.